Friday, everybody. It's May 15th. Welcome to virtual day trip to wine country. I'm Sam Kimball from New York Wine Events. Today, we are going west again. This was West Week. We're going to the Sonoma Valley, the beautiful Sonoma Valley, and specifically to Geyserville, California. You can see some of the views and the imagery we're going to experience behind me here. This is a gorgeous shot of the vineyard with the fog coming in the morning. And we all know Sonoma as a world famous wine growing region. And Geyserville, California, where we're going, is a great spot that has a selection of restaurants, lodging, and of course, wineries. And today, I'm really excited to announce we are headed to Pedroncelli Winery in Geyserville, California, in the Sonoma Valley. Pedroncelli is awesome. Their calling card is Zinfandel. It's also one of the oldest wineries in Sonoma. And at this point, it's the oldest family-owned winery in the Sonoma Valley. Founded 93 years ago and going strong 9 decades later. To learn all about Pedroncelli Winery, you can visit pedroncelli.com. That's Pedroncelli.com, pedroncelli.com. And when we have great deals on the show, and today there's a great deal on the show, you may know if you've watched before that I can't help myself. At the top of the broadcast, I have to say there's an awesome deal on pedroncelli.com. It's in the Steals and Deals link on the website. There's currently an amazing offer there. You get free shipping anywhere in the US on 6 bottles or more. And all of the Pedroncelli wines are affordable. They're awesome. I mean, you taste the history and the heritage and the quality. Just use the promo code NYWE, which stands for New York Wine Events. And that is an awesome offer. If you've ever ordered wine and you live like I do on the East Coast from California, even a couple of bottles, the shipping can be $40, $50 or more. If you have questions during our session today and during the tasting, please put them in the Q&A module in Zoom or put them in the chat and we'll tackle them. We'll try to tackle them as we go along. I'm proud to say that at New York Wine Events, we have worked with Pedroncelli at our events in the past, specifically the Zinfandel experience in New York City. So it's with great pleasure today that I'm announcing that we're hosting the co-owner of Pedroncelli Winery, Julie Pedroncelli. Julie, it's awesome to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, hello from California. It's wonderful to be here and talking to everybody.
There's a long history to your winery, and I think it would be great to hear a little bit of the background, a little bit more about Pedroncelli. How did it get started originally?
My grandparents, Giovanni and Julia Pedroncelli, came to buy this piece of property first of all, in the middle of Prohibition. It was a shuttered winery, 25 acres of vineyard, the vineyard you see behind Sam, and a home. And they came there with their young family and were able to continue to sell the grapes until Prohibition ended. And once repeal came around, we went into the winemaking end of the business and have been doing it now for 9, as Sam said, 9 decades in our little corner of Dry Creek Valley in Sonoma County.
That is awesome. And was there a particular philosophy and approach to winemaking as things got going and momentum gathered that the winery took in terms of the direction?
Yes. One little interesting bit of our history is that we've only had 3 winemakers in our 93 years. My grandfather was first. My Uncle John became winemaker in 1948, so that's the 2nd generation. He and his brother Jim were part of that 2nd generation. So Jim is my dad. And he made wine until 2014.
Wow.
That's a long time. So he really established the winemaking style or house style, which I would say is a little bit of old world with a California twist. The fruit is grown here, so we eat a little more fruit forward. And my Uncle John always loved to bring those fruit qualities forward, also by using very low amounts of new oak, not to overwhelm the wine. So acidity is there, fruit is there, all is in balance. And I mentioned a third winemaker, Montse Reese. She's from Spain, and she became an assistant winemaker in 2007 and our winemaker in 2015. So she's currently making the wines, but always loved to say she worked with an icon and was so honored to do so, and she continues the tradition.
That is great to hear. Are there particular grape varietals and types of wine or styles of wine that you're focused on? I know that Zinfandel is a big focus, but you do make other wines. And so for anybody watching who wants to take advantage of the offer today, yes, and the free shipping on 6 bottles or more, that applies to anything on your website. Which types of grapes and varietals and styles have you focused on besides Zinfandel?
All right. So as you said, we started with Zinfandel, but we have diversified. We now make 21 different wines. Some are trios of the same varietal, just a single vineyard. On the home ranch, we have Zinfandel, Cabernet Sauvignon, Petite Syrah, Portuguese varietals. We even make a dessert wine out of Portuguese varietals. And then Sauvignon Blanc is the only white wine grape we grow. But we do make Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, which are all sourced from the cooler southern end of Dry Creek Valley and into the Russian River Valley. So about 60% of our line is estate sourced. Again, Cabernet Sauvignon, Zinfandel are our top, what I would call our flagships. But we have a diversification of a line that kind of offers something for everyone. We even make a Sangiovese, for instance, or and Merlot young. So we make lots of choices.
That is so interesting to hear, especially because, you know, when we think about winemaking and we look at Europe, right? France and Italy, Spain, thousands of years of winemaking, and we look at the New World, the US or New Zealand or South Africa, and a much shorter time frame of making wine. But a lot of people don't realize, if you compare, for example, California to New York State, where we're based, it's a major wine region here, not nearly as big as California. We've been making wine in New York State for 60 years, maybe 55, 60 years. California has been making wines since before the Civil War. We're talking about 150 plus years. And so when you talk about the different varietals and wines that you guys make, and then you think about how sometimes at grand tastings there's those are New World producers, and these are Old World producers, and there's sort of a implied value judgment. I'm curious, how do you guys view that sort of, New World, you know, sort of looking askance versus Old World? Because you've been in business for 93 years making wine. It's not like you're new at this. And I'm curious, you know, when you talk about the history, it sounds like there are some influences of European winemaking tradition, and certainly from your immigrant grandparents, that play into the formula.
Yes, and a big part of that, what we plant, came from World War II, actually. You know, we were growing and making Zinfandel before that time, and a few other kind of lesser known varietals. It wasn't until 1965 that we planted Cabernet Sauvignon. We were the first to do so in Dry Creek Valley, in our part of the county. And we, John and my dad, realized that there was a desire for these varietals that were familiar to the people who had served over in World War II in Europe, and came back not only with a thirst for wine, but a thirst for specific varietals. So we're just very lucky that Dry Creek Valley and Sonoma County and Napa, for that matter, all of our area of California is so perfectly suited as a Mediterranean climate and does really well with these varietals. I'll say I've tried both French and, our versions, Cabernet Sauvignon, Bordeaux and Cabernet Sauvignon, and they share some characteristics, but because they're grown in different places, there's still some differences. So I think it's an exciting new world that we live in, as far as what we've planted and what we've grown into as a wine industry out here.
So you don't take umbrage or offense at that new world, old world comparison?
No, but I will. Can I tell you a really quick, funny story? The very first time I did a tasting in New York, it was with a trade group, our Sonoma County. So we were all from Sonoma County, and we were for it. And a lady came up to me at the tasting, and she said, "California doesn't make any good wines." This was like 30 years ago, and I kind of looked at her. Because I come from my family, at that point, we were 70 years into the business. And so I thought we knew a few things about winemaking, but I think that attitude, at least from that story and going forward, has changed just a bit. But yeah, I embrace, I love wine in all the areas. And so, I think there's room for growth and for seeking adventure as we all go on our wine adventures and seek out different wines.
I guess my point is that, the judgment of Paris in 1976 was not the beginning of California wine.
Right.
I mean, the monks were making wine in Temecula in the 1830s.
Oh, yes.
And I'm sure some of it was very good. So the idea that suddenly California emerged as a quality winemaker in 1976 is a flawed view, in my opinion.
All right, I agree.
So on that note, talking about great wine, you guys specialize in Zinfandel and also Cabernet Sauvignon. With Zinfandel, and our audience doesn't know it as well as Californians do. It's kind of the unofficial red wine grape of California. What makes a great Zinfandel, and how do you contrast and compare a great Zinfandel with a great Cabernet Sauvignon? Nothing wrong with Cabernet Sauvignon, but for those of us who are less familiar with Zinfandel, how great can it be, and how does it compare and contrast, and what makes it great?
I would say, if I were to define a great Zinfandel, I would say it would have a balance between the fruit that it is so well known for. Those little bunch of grapes behind me, those are nice, juicy Zinfandel grapes. They produce the most beautiful berry aspect. But to make it a great Zinfandel, it has to be in balance. I'll use a phrase that our winemaker coined. She said, "We make spice bombs, not fruit bombs when it comes to Zinfandel, because we get also this little kind of freshly ground black pepper spice that comes in our vineyards around here, and it really comes through in the wine. So when you get the balance and picking it at the right moment, not too ripe, then you have a great Zinfandel on your hands." And the mark of a great Zinfandel is its ability to go well with food, because that, to me, for any great wine, food is, always something I'm seeking to find the right matches and things like that. So a great Zinfandel has what I would call its berry. Like if you take like a blackberry or a raspberry, there's different kinds of berry aspects in Zinfandels across the board, but it will have that. It will have a little spiciness. And then of course, the tannins are a little lighter when comparing it to Cabernet Sauvignon. Those tend to have a little bit more what I call oomph in the glass. When you taste it, it's like, wow, this is a little drying. That's Cabernet Sauvignon, a little bit more tannins. With Zinfandel, it's a little rounder, a little softer fruit. But so the differences there, Cabernet isn't as fruity as a Zinfandel, and what makes both great is the fact that when they're in balance, you'll realize that as you pair it with food or even just in your glass, it'll be something that comes together nicely.
I've had your Zinfandel, and there have been times where I've opened a bottle of Pedroncelli and just had the wine. Maybe a little, maybe I had some cheese, but I mean, you can it's a big, bold red California based wine. However, um, it's delicious to drink on its own, and it does pair well with many foods. In fact, when we taste these three that we're featuring today, we will ask you for some pairing suggestions. All right, let's do a little tour of Pedroncelli Winery. I thought it would be fun to start with, since you're 93 years young as a winery today, to start with this photo, which I believe, and I'll get out of the way, this is early days, yeah?
Yeah. Yes.
And what year was this? What was happening? What kind of wine was being made?
That building actually is still here, not quite in that look, but that was here when my grandparents bought the property. So there has been a winery. That building dates back to the early 1900s. As you see, it's been built out on both ends, but that middle section is the original winery that my grandfather bought. And it still is used today as part of our cellaring. There's several other buildings on the property, but I like that because it has bonded winery 113. When my grandfather went back, to apply for the federal government for the number, 113 was the original number from the previous winery, and he basically got it okayed and grandfathered in. So that number dates all the way back to about 1904, when the original family had the winery.
That's great. And then what is it? What are we looking at here in the background?
You're looking at sunset on our tasting room building. So that is the door you're going to walk in if you're ever going to come out and visit us. And our tasting room is tucked away inside, but the views are of the vineyard that you had behind you originally. That's what you would be looking at.
Awesome. And then what are we looking at here?
So in the foreground is what we call our mother clone vineyard. So this is all, you'll see their head prune vines. This is about the fall. We always like to say we have our own fall colors out in the wine country, and that's what we get to see. And then of course in the foreground are all the winery buildings. The tasting room is the closest, and then on out to all the production.
Got it.
Warehouse.
And then when we get into production, obviously this is a close-up of looks like a very cold tank.
That is a tank of Sauvignon Blanc being cold stabilized, so that you don't have any cloudy conditions in your white wine. So everything, all the solids basically drop out and it becomes shelf stable basically. But yeah, so that's what happens right before we go to bottling.
See everybody, a lot goes into making these wines perfect for you. No sediment, no cloudiness. Everything gets made wonderful. So, and then we go to the barrel room.
Yes.
And what's happening here? What kinds of wine are in these barrels?
All right. So this room is all red wine. Our barrels, there's about 2,000 barrels in there. We couldn't get them all in the picture, but it gives you an idea. And this, each of our red wines is aged about a year. Some less. Our Pinot Noir sees about 8 months, and some more. One of our reserve Cabernets sees about nearly 2 years in oak before we bottle it. So it's just it's a temperature controlled, it's humidified. A little bit of background about barrels. The wine is in there for a year. It does lose, even though we've got it humidified. So we top them off. So every barrel is taken down. It's quite a process. 2,000 barrels, every one of them taken down to make sure they're sound, no leaks, etc. And then refilled and put back, and then continues on with the aging process.
That's a good point. A lot of people think that when the wine is put in the tanks or put in the barrels, or even bottling, like for example, a sparkling wine, there's still stuff to do after bottling, that it just gets to sit there. But actually, there's a lot of work and actual ongoing love and tender love and care that goes after the wine is in the barrels and in the tanks and even in the bottles, especially when you talk about sparkling, where they have to turn the bottles to get the sediment out. All right, well, I'm getting thirsty. Let's move on to the tasting, we have three great Zinfandels that we're going to virtually taste with you. And I know we're going to get started, I think, first with the mother clone Zinfandel. I'm going to put this image up on my screen so everybody can see it, but to my right there, you can see the mother clone bottle. And what is this wine all about, Julie?
All right. Well, our flagship. This is the style that started with my grandfather, continued with my uncle, and Monse continues today. And that style is, when I was talking earlier about what makes it great, Zinfandel. This is the berry spice component in here. The berry is a little more forward. So you get little notes of, in this is the 2018 vintage that I'm tasting right now, and it's got some notes of raspberry, a little bit less blackberry than in riper, what I would consider really ripe years. So there's really a delicacy to it, and then behind it comes the spice. And of the three Zinfandels that I'll talk about today, this is the only one with Petit Syrah blended into it, because that is the tradition always with this particular style of Zinfandel. And what that does as an added grape does a few things. Add some color, so it's a little bit deeper, darker, red, and it adds some structure. And when I say structure, I mean that oomph I talked about in the Cabernet. It gives some chewiness to it that it wouldn't have if it was just 100% Zinfandel. And mainly because of where these grapes are grown. But so for the most part, we've got berry spice working in here. It sees 1 year in American oak, just so you know, and about 25% new. What that does is gives a little oak complexity, but not too much. You're still, Zinfandels with that beautiful fruit is going to come forward with that little less new oak in the process.
And this mother clone is your flagship red Zinfandel, yeah?
Yes.
And
yes,
what's the ideal food pairing, in your opinion, what's the ideal food pairing combination with this?
Well, ideal, it's something long cooked, braised. I would say, I know we're kind of moving into summertime now. Ribs are also very good with mother clones in, but braised meats. I did a braised pork. It was a butternut squash, braised pork, and prunes, which are Italian dried plums. And it was that little bit of sweetness really matched well with the Zin. But when you have something long cooked, there's just something about it that really kind of matches very well with our mother clone Zin.
That's great. Excellent. And this is, what's the retail on this one?
That would be $19.
Very, very reachable, very accessible wine. All right, so the next one I think we're doing is the Bushnell, yeah?
Yes.
Excellent. So this is the bottle image, everybody, which you can see on screen. And this has got a wonderful label celebrating the 90-year anniversary. What is this wine all about, and how is it distinct and differentiated from the mother clone?
Right. So the mother clone, just to give you an idea of where the vineyard is, the mother clone is on our home ranch, and it's head pruned up on the hillsides. This vineyard was actually owned by my grandfather in the 1940s, sold it to his daughter and son-in-law in the 1950s. And those were the Pedrones, my uncle Al and Margaret, and they tended that vineyard from the 1950s to the 1990s, when their daughter, Carol Bushnell, then inherited the place and now farms it with us. We have had every grape pick from this property come into the winery since the 1940s. So it has a very long history with us. The difference, however, between this and the mother clone is, I'd say, if we were going to say berry spice with the mother clone, this is more spice berry. The spice is much more forward. It's a little bit more of an elegant style of Zinfandel. It has a much deeper fruit reflection, more along that riper blackberry, maybe a little bit of jamminess in there. So, just think when you ever, spread jam on your toast, you get a little bit of those concentrated flavors, and that's what you're getting in with the Bushnell Zin, Bushnell Vineyard Zinfandel. And it is 100% Zin from, they farm, with us, we farm about 15 acres, and this comes off of one specific block. So it's a smaller lot, even than the mother clone Zinfandel.
Got it. And what would this go well with in terms of food?
I was thinking about it, and you know what I like? Because it's easy for the most part, a little preparation, but a charcuterie board. If you ever have, there's so much access to artisan cheeses and artisan salumi these days that I think that is a wonderful, wonderful pairing with this. Because it could be a picnic, it could be dinner, it could be, depending on what you have on that. But just think of some sort of, you could even have probably a salami sandwich with this and it would go great. But it just, I like to keep things simple sometimes. And when I was thinking about this wine, I thought, charcuterie board. So.
And that's something that a lot of people have handy, and especially when we're all on quarantine. Those are relatively available items.
Mm-hmm.
When are we going to talk popcorn, Julie?
Yeah.
Are we?
Speaking of pandemic pantries. All right. So this is something we were talking a little bit earlier. What do you have? And when you can't go to the store as often, or I haven't quite gotten into the ordering online, so I, mask up and go to the store. So I bought a big bag of popcorn, and my husband, that's his favorite snack. So we air pop it, and then he puts some spray olive oil on it and Parmesan cheese, because most of us have a little chunk of Parmesan cheese or even the shaker of Parmesan cheese.
Yep.
And that olive oil helps it stick. And boy, does that go well with wine. I mean, you can pretty much, you get a little bit of that saltiness, and it's perfect.
I'm trying it tonight. I've got some microwave popcorn. I've got grated Parmesan, fresh grated Parmesan, and I'll get the olive oil going. I don't have a sprayer. I don't have to figure that out. The olive oil.
Hey, I got it at Trader Joe's.
Okay.
So,
you heard it here. Trader Joe's spray on olive oil.
And I'm not getting paid for that.
The third wine is the 2017 Courage Zinfandel.
Yes.
Do we need courage to drink this one?
Yes. Well, it actually is coming at a very good time. Courage, we all need it right now. Courage in your glass, courage in your life.
Courage in your life.
The story behind it is we came up with a Wisdom Cabernet Sauvignon, and we wanted to do a single vineyard Zinfandel, and came up with the name Courage because two things. It takes courage to be a farmer, and it takes courage to grow Zinfandel because Zinfandel can be very finicky. And this actually came from a grower, Filoni Vineyard, that his vineyard is located just across the creek from us. And the interesting thing is that I talked about the other vineyards being head pruned, which are those, kind of, they're these big, head pruned vines, so they grow canes out. Well, most other vineyards are planted on a trellis, so you have the canes grow out. This is a Zinfandel vineyard that's on a trellis. Nobody has ever really, that's not a traditional thing to grow Zinfandel on, but Mr. David Filoni does a great job with it. And so this is an even smaller lot than the Bushnell vineyard. So we've kind of gone along, we've fine-tuned, and this one, so we had berry spice mother clone, spice berry with the Bushnell, and our Filoni Vineyard Courage Zinfandel is more of a floral berry. So what you get is, it almost reminds me of when you just pick these fresh berries, if you've ever had a basket of them and you've inhaled this lovely kind of, it almost takes on a floral note.
Yep.
It's so ripe, That's what you have in the Courage Zinfandel. It's got that bit of spiciness in the background, but it's the most in the background. This one really, the if you would if you enjoy kind of the fruitier side of Zinfandel, this one is for you.
Excellent. And what's the food combination you recommend here?
Peeking at my notes. Okay, so since it's nearing summer for most of us, I just, believe it or not, I just made this yesterday. It is grilled sausages. Now, you can do pork if you like. I actually use spicy Italian turkey sausages,
Yeah.
which I love. We were, anyway, so, and we're on a shoulder season, so I've got some fennel and cauliflower and red onion, and I grilled all of it, and then made a gremolata. So a basil gremolata with some little toasted pine nuts, and my favorite thing, red pepper flakes. I made it a little spicy, but it just that spiciness, and it really the whole thing. And we don't always think of vegetables going with wine, but you can use things that will pull it together, like the gremolata.
That's interesting. So the spice in the food and then the floral notes of the wine.
Right.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
So, and what's the retail on the Courage?
The retail on the Courage is 32.
32.
Yeah.
And I forgot to ask you on the Bushnell, what's the retail?
26.
26. So again, these are very accessible, very affordable. And again, we'll all of these are available on pedroncelli.com on your website. Additionally, if you missed it at the beginning, there's a promo code offer. We used the promo code NYWE, stands for New York Wine Events, and you get free shipping anywhere in the US on 6 bottles or more. I certainly recommend, I know the Zinfandels very well. However, I'm sure that some of the non-Zinfandel selections are excellent. And actually, Julie and I are already talking about doing a broadcast maybe next month where we just focus on the non-Zinfandel wines at Pedroncelli Winery. So take advantage of that promo code offer. And Julie, I have one last question for you. Do you have a wine club? And tell us about it if you do.
Oh, yes. We have, it's called Club Ped. And we have, hey, it was in the Club Med days, so, we got creative. So we have several levels. We like to give people choices. So we have an all-inclusive, it goes out 4 times a year. February, May, so our shipment just went out this week, and September and November. The all-inclusive always includes a white wine. Then you can choose all red, and we also have an all white wine club. So we have a few choices. We also have a Zin fan club. So when one of our 3 Zinfandels is released, you're on the list, you get a case of that. And the same for the Cabernets.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like it's well worth it. People should check it out. It's on the website. I have one other question I forgot to ask you.
That's
on your website, what is Vino in my Dino?
Well, that is my winery blog. I write it. Vino in my Dino comes from when I was a kid, 4 years old. I remember it very clearly. I had the Flintstone set, and so Dino cup. And my parents, I always wanted wine. They put about that much wine and about that much water. And I always said, I don't want any water. My Vino, just get it out of there.
Vino in my Dino.
So since I was 4, Vino in my Dino is just the name for our winery blog. And I talk about all different kinds of things that go on at the winery or history, etc.
I love it. I love it. That is so cool. Well, Julie, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being part of Virtual Day Trip to Wine Country. We're looking forward. I'm looking forward to coming out as soon as possible and actually visiting. It's been too long. We've known you guys for too long now. It's high time that we get out there and see where the magic happens. So stay safe. Thank you so much again. And we will see you again soon. Let's do a broadcast where we talk about some of the other wines too.
Will do. Look forward to it.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Stay safe. Take care now.